I am ashamed of my sister, who is a bridesmaid, for demanding that she be maid of honor instead of me. In approximately 1.5 months, my elder sister, F28, will be married. My younger sister, F26, is distressed about this. I was maid of honor for my sister's wedding. To provide context, my mother raised me and my sister Laura without a father for the first 5 years of my life. We were a family of 3 until my mother met my stepfather. My sister Laura and I were married and had our younger sister Carrie not long after my stepfather came into our lives. Prior to this, my mother and I lived in a small apartment with few possessions, but we were content because we had a roof over our heads and food on the table. My stepfather has an excellent job, so once they married and had Carrie, they moved into a nice big house, a mansion, in comparison to their apartment. They began receiving gifts at Christmas and birthdays. This is what Carrie grew up with, and while we grew up with a similar lifestyle, I do not believe it negatively affected us. We recall the experience of frugality and limited resources, whereas my mother to this day remains frugal and enjoys thrifting or making her own items, as we did. Consequently, Laura and I are distinct from Carrie in this regard. Carrie has always been indulged, but rather than expressing her desires in a disruptive manner, she will request a $500 birthday cake, which she will only accept if it is from a well-known brand. If she is unable to obtain the item in question, she will become upset for 3 days and display a negative mood. It is noteworthy that she still resides with her parents and has not yet established her own residence. She has a job of her own, and her parents seem to be supportive of this arrangement. However, it is worth noting that Laura's boyfriend of 6 years proposed last year, which was a source of great joy for all of us. He is a kind and admirable individual, and we all adore him. When she first got engaged, she gave me her friend Charlotte a box of exquisite earrings. It should be noted that the question of whether I would be a bridesmaid was raised. My response was that I would be honored to play this role. We were all excited and began to discuss ideas and consider potential arrangements. However, the couple decided to postpone their plans for a year in order to save money and to consider their options. 4 months ago, Laura announced that she was pregnant. As a family, we were all delighted, with the exception of Carrie, who remained silent and did not express her thoughts on the matter. Laura then explained that she and Alan had decided to hold the wedding in 2 months' time, with approximately 30 to 40 guests, in order to celebrate before the birth of their child. The couple's stepfather offered them $10,000, which they accepted. The couple wished to have their dream wedding, but due to unforeseen circumstances, they requested that the majority of the funds be allocated towards purchasing a house that they had identified. The groom's father agreed to this proposal, and the bride's mother and I have been engaged in meticulous planning. While this has been an enjoyable process, there has been a notable absence of input from the bride herself. From the outset, and at each stage of the wedding planning process, she either spent a significant amount of time on her mobile phone or failed to engage with the proceedings. Finally, Laura had to intervene and request that she contribute more to the planning process. Carrie agreed to do so when we were on our way to the dollar store to purchase wedding decorations. Upon our arrival, Carrie expressed her disdain for the store and its products, stating, "Dollar store." The subject of decorations was raised, and Carrie expressed her disapproval. When we inquired about her willingness to assist with the creation of handmade invitations, she once again expressed her disinterest and stated that the invitations would resemble those created by preschoolers. She then abruptly terminated the conversation. Recently, while we were all dressed and shopping, Laura informed us that we could select any dress we desired. We were given the option of selecting any dress we wished, provided it was blue. This was because our mother, Charlotte, and I were paying for it ourselves. We therefore proceeded to H&M, where we found a number of blue summer maxi dresses of varying styles. My mother chose a floral cotton dress, while I selected a lace dress. Carrie, however, was not satisfied with any of them and wanted to purchase a $2,000 bridesmaid dress. Laura's mother informed her that the bridesmaid designer gown she had found online was exorbitant. Laura's gown, however, did not cost that much, so Carrie, of course, became indignant. My mother, in an effort to avoid further conflict, accompanied Carrie to a bridal shop. Carrie immediately found a pink blush gown that she felt compelled to wear, but it was priced at $1. Mom said no, plus it's not even blue like the other bridesmaids. My sister then said blue was the stupidest color for a bridesmaid dress because we don't even live near the ocean. We all left, and she had her little pout. Mom lectured her and told her this is a frugal wedding, it's in our backyard barbecue with only 30 to 40 people, and so she doesn't need a $2,000 designer dress of any kind. Fast forward to a few days later. Furthermore, Carrie asserts that she located a dress to wear that she had previously owned. Additionally, it was blue, which we considered an excellent choice. However, upon visiting her parents' residence, Carrie paraded in her former high school prom dress, which is essentially a puffy ball gown bedazzled with jewels. As is common with many individuals, Carrie had outgrown this dress by the time she graduated from high school. Consequently, her breasts were visible, and the overall silhouette was not flattering. Furthermore, she was wearing a tiara adorned with sparkling jewels. A tiara adorned with sparkling jewels that she claimed she purchased exclusively for the wedding. Mom and Laura remained silent, and I finally felt compelled to interject, stating that her choice of attire was not merely ostentatious but also ill-advised. The dress in question was more elaborate than that of the bride, and Carrie's decision to wear a crown was particularly perplexing. At this juncture, we observe a moment of silence, until Laura interjects to clarify that she is the maid of honor. She goes on to say that Amy and Charlotte are the bridesmaids. This prompts Carrie to react with indignation, questioning the veracity of Laura's assertion. Carrie asserts that she was informed that she was maid of honor, and that she had been given jewelry as a result. She then proceeds to accuse Laura of misleading her. The title bridesmaid was either a misnomer or, alternatively, a source of denial on Carrie's part. She had been maid of honor throughout the entire period in question, yet she had not mentioned it until this point. This resulted in a catastrophic breakdown, the likes of which I have never witnessed in my entire life. I had always assumed that such behavior was confined to the realms of fiction and film. However, when a Redditor posted about a bridezilla or a wedding meltdown, I had previously considered this to be an exaggerated account, but this has been the most severe and prolonged episode of distress I have ever witnessed in my family. Carrie began screaming and crying, tearing off her crown and stomping around the room until her father came to investigate the commotion. Through her sobs, she informed Laura that her wedding was a mistake and that she should have used the $10,000 for a more suitable venue. She also expressed her desire to use the money for a more tasteful wedding than the one she had planned with her fiancé, Alan. She also stated that it was an ill-advised decision for my sister to wed while pregnant, as the bride would appear to be a fat swan in her wedding dress. Additionally, she expressed her opinion that the color blue is a poor choice, given that the family does not reside near an ocean. At this juncture, it appears that she is merely fabricating arguments. Dad attempted to calm her down, but she finally screamed that if she cannot be maid of honor, then no one can. At this juncture, Laura is in a state of distress, sobbing uncontrollably. I am on the verge of physically assaulting her, but before I can utter a word, Laura interjects, "Fine, you can be maid of honor. You win." With that, Carrie stops crying and offers a faint smile before retreating to her room. Mom and Dad begin to argue, with Dad asserting that there is no way to control a 20-year-old. A year has passed. Old's behavior and Laura's subsequent departure to the next room to contact Alan about the potential cancellation of the wedding resulted in my immediate and intense emotional response. I proceeded to storm into the room where she was located, only to find her on her laptop, ordering the pink 2K dress that I had previously deemed inappropriate. I was so overwhelmed by her audacity that I was unable to confront her directly. I left the room without saying a word. Laura is in the next room, crying to her fiancé, while her parents are yelling. Carrie is in her room, buying useless items because she got her way. I have never been this angry. I wish Laura had more of a backbone. I would have told Carrie not to bother coming if she was going to act like that. I am at a loss as to how to proceed. I am also disheartened by Laura's decision to bestow the title upon her without any prior discussion. I am unsure of how to respond to this situation. We reside on a farm with a 6-acre plot of open space where the wedding is being held. The cooks, who are preparing the hot dogs and hamburgers, will be wearing masks, and all guests are required to wear masks. Hand sanitizer bottles are available at every table. I apologize for the omission, I had forgotten to include this information. Personally, I would not want to risk it too much, but I will be wearing a mask and hand sanitizing constantly so that I do not have to miss my sister's wedding. Regarding the upcoming wedding of my sister, I am hopeful that everything will proceed smoothly. We also have a small tap at the side of our house that we use as a sink on a regular basis. This is available to guests. I frequently forget that many people are not currently taking any precautions at all. Therefore, I wanted to mention that we are taking at least some precautions. My sister's demand that I be maid of honor instead of her was motivated by her desire to provide an update on the events of this afternoon, which occurred 3 days after the initial meltdown. In order to provide a comprehensive account, I have given considerable thought and allowed sufficient time for reflection and consideration of the advice provided by others on this forum. Alan and Laura's fiancé had actually called. He contacted me early this morning and inquired as to my availability to visit Laura. He expressed frustration with the situation and indicated that we needed to act promptly. I was gratified to learn that I was not the only individual experiencing similar sentiments. I promptly proceeded to Laura's residence. Upon arrival, I observed Laura seated on the couch in her pajamas, with her hair unwashed. It appeared as though she had been crying. In the preceding days, Laura had been crying. The image was heartbreaking. She immediately apologized to me and said she didn't know what to do. Alan suggested that we, the 3 of us, sit down with her and have an intervention. However, Laura rejected this idea. She said she didn't think she could handle any more yelling. I concurred that Laura would benefit from a change in her environment, as being yelled at is the last thing she needs. I proposed that we limit our interactions to just me and Alan, but Laura was hesitant about this as well. She was concerned that Carrie might feel overwhelmed by our presence. After some deliberation, Laura decided that she simply wanted to speak with me privately. I spoke with Carrie without her parents present, as well as with Sue. We collectively compiled a list of topics that I should address with her, in order to prevent digressions. These included the inadmissibility of yelling at a pregnant woman, regardless of the circumstances, and the unacceptability of her disrespectful behavior, including criticism of the wedding plans. I also discussed with Laura the issue of Charlotte and I, the other bridesmaid, planning to have a fun bachelorette slumber party in a few days to help Laura celebrate. Her demeanor visibly brightened, and she appeared eager. I informed her that the event was to be a surprise, and Carrie was to attend. However, given the circumstances and the fact that it was to be held at my residence, I no longer wished for her presence. I sought to ascertain Laura's sentiments on the matter. She expressed her approval and expressed a preference for her other friend over Carrie. I informed her that she could invite her other friend over instead of her. I then proceeded to speak with my parents about Carrie. My mother inquired as to my purpose for being there. I informed her that I needed to speak with Carrie. My mother then proceeded to look around and, in a hushed tone, informed me that Carrie was not available. I advised my mother that it would be best for me to leave, as the previous 3 days had seen Carrie displaying a contented demeanor. I informed her that, in fact, the situation had not been resolved, and that it was, in fact, far from being resolved. At this point, Carrie entered the kitchen and inquired as to my whereabouts. My mother attempted to deflect the issue, stating that there was nothing to discuss. Amy was merely on her way to retrieve something, but she has since departed. I informed her that I wished to speak with her about the incident that transpired the previous day. Carrie appeared displeased, and her mother's face was noticeably flushed. However, Carrie and I proceeded to enter her bedroom to speak with her. I began by informing her of the unacceptable nature of her actions, which involved raising her voice and screaming at a pregnant woman. I explained that such behavior could potentially harm the unborn child. Immediately, Carrie reacted with skepticism, denying the veracity of my claims. She asserted that I was fabricating falsehoods to make her feel guilty. I proceeded to clarify my stance. She asserted that the baby would not be affected by my raising my voice, and that it was not aware of the situation. I informed her that I was not going to engage in further debate with her, as she was exhibiting irrational behavior. I informed her that regardless of whether she was pregnant or not, this was Laura's wedding, not hers, and that name-calling was unacceptable. She did, and the harsh criticism of the decorations was entirely unbecoming of a mature adult. I then brought up the fact that her throwing that tantrum to get her way was the most childish thing I've ever seen in my life. If things were reversed and I made Laura take away her car, Carrie would have been similarly distressed had she been in my position, so how could it be considered acceptable for her to react in such a way to my actions? She informed me that I was behaving in a pathetic manner and that I was displaying signs of jealousy. She then stated that there was no real issue at hand and that I was merely jealous. Laura had previously expressed her desire for me, and I informed her that this was untrue. She desired my presence, otherwise she would not have requested that Carrie cease the altercation. Carrie then expressed a sense of superiority, stating that I was powerless to influence the situation and that I should simply accept it. This was when I informed her that she was no longer welcome at the sleepover that we had planned, and that Laura was also excluded. I informed Carrie that she was no longer welcome in my and my fiancé's home until she apologized to me, Laura, and our parents for her outrageous behavior. Mom suddenly burst through the door, assuming she was listening in and going completely ape. She informed me that I had no right to ban Carrie from our home. My mother informed me that I was no longer permitted to have sleepovers at my house and that I was merely attempting to retaliate against Carrie. She asserted that Carrie had not intended to cause any emotional distress, whereas I was currently engaging in such behavior on purpose. This was when Carrie began to express her distress. She claimed that I was always bullying her and that I was not being fair. My mother then approached Carrie and began rubbing her back, stating, "I know, honey. She's being very rude to you right now. You didn't start anything. Just relax." At this point, I noticed my stepfather standing at the door. I asked him, "Do you not see all this? At least inform you that she purchased the pink 2K dress." Dad appeared to be somewhat uncomfortable, glancing between my mother, sister, and me before saying, "I believe everyone is experiencing stress, and no one is being entirely truthful. Sibling rivalry is common, and I anticipate that by the end of the wedding, you will all be the best of friends." At this point, I was extremely frustrated. I informed the assembled group that I was leaving. My mother then rose to her feet and asserted that the discussion was not yet concluded. I informed her that, in fact, the discussion was over. Unless Carrie apologized to me and Laura, I would not be speaking to her on my way out. I had heard Carrie say that there was nothing for her to apologize for, but I kept walking to say that I was emotionally distressed and physically uncomfortable, and I desired relief from the pain and nausea. I sought medication and nourishment at the nearest convenience store. This action may have constituted a transgression, though I am uncertain. In my previous post, I did not mention this because I did not consider it pertinent. It should be noted that Carrie has a boyfriend, whom she has been dating for approximately 6 months. His name is Noah, and he is 27 years old. Noah is a devout Christian and generally regarded as a very pleasant individual. I first met him at the city's university approximately 2 years ago, where we shared several classes and subsequently became close friends. He and Carrie have a number of shared interests. They share a mutual interest in animals. Noah fosters animals on a regular basis, and Carrie was contemplating a career as a veterinarian at the time. In early January, Noah relocated to our city, where he secured employment as a pharmacist. This coincided with the beginning of his relationship with Carrie, which was met with approval from our group. All was well with this arrangement because he is a genuinely good person, guided by Christian values. He is eager to marry and start a family, and has expressed multiple times his hope to be engaged by the end of this year. Carrie is also his first romantic partner, which may be another reason for his eagerness to commit. I procured some Advil and juice and was surprised to see Noah, as I was unaware that he worked at this particular pharmacy. He greeted me and observed the Advil, inquiring if I was unwell. I informed him that I was not, merely experiencing a headache from the wedding stress. He expressed surprise, stating that Carrie had not mentioned any such stress. She informed me that everything was going well, which surprised me, but mostly angered me. I inquired whether this meant that she had not informed him of the situation that had occurred a few days prior. He was unaware of this, so I provided him with a brief overview of the events, including the name-calling, screaming, and the fact that she had chosen her own dress over my sister's. Wishes and how, now she's the new maid of honor. This surprised Noah. He said, "Are you sure? I know Carrie. She always hates yelling. Did she make that big of a scene?" I told him, yes, it was all very unfortunately true. Then I told him that if she talks to him, please, I suggested that he recommend her to a therapist, as he is acquainted with several. I also informed him that, in my opinion, she may require medication for bipolar disorder. I told him that I was no longer involved with her unless she apologized. I advised him to think carefully before making a commitment to her in the near future. He remained silent. I remained at the aforementioned location for a period of time, during which I did not receive a response. Consequently, I departed. Upon my return home, I encountered Alan and my fiancée engaged in the act of playing video games. They inquired as to the nature of my absence, to which I provided a comprehensive account of the events that had transpired. Alan and my fiancée expressed their belief that I had acted appropriately in all respects, including the act of warning Noah at a later point in the evening. However, I subsequently received a multitude of text messages from Carrie and my mother, who expressed profound displeasure at my decision to divulge any information to Noah. I did not respond to any of the messages and, instead, temporarily blocked both of their phone numbers. With regard to Noah, it is evident that Carrie exerts considerable influence over him. Consequently, I am uncertain as to the extent of his capacity to take any meaningful action. He is aware of her pouty and spoiled personas, yet he seems to be unaware of the full extent of her behavior. I felt compelled to communicate my concerns. I wish I could say that I feel better and like a new woman, but I don't. I feel hurt and betrayed. It feels like my throat or my chest is clogged. I am experiencing a sense of emotional congestion, and I am uncertain as to whether this will dissipate in the long term. Laura contacted me to inform me that she is keen for me to act as her maid of honor. However, in order to maintain harmonious relations, she has chosen Carrie for the role for the time being. I will endeavor to set aside my personal feelings and support my sister in any decision she makes. I will love my new niece/nephew dearly. I am grateful to everyone for listening. Should you have any further advice or words of wisdom, I would be interested to hear them. I am currently engaged in a process of shaming my sister, who is a bridesmaid, for demanding to be maid of honor instead of me. This process has been ongoing for approximately 2 weeks. The events of the past 2 weeks have been somewhat surreal. I had a discussion with Carrie, and subsequently, I have blocked my parents and Carrie from all communication. I was hoping that things might settle on their own, but it did not exactly settle. Approximately 2 weeks after the incident, my fiancé and I were relaxing in the evening, watching television. It was approximately 2:00 a.m. At 2 a.m., my fiancé received a phone call from Carrie, whom he had never blocked. Initially, we chose to ignore the call, as we were reluctant to engage in a conversation with Carrie at that hour. Subsequently, following the initial call, a second call was received, this time in the form of a voice message. The message demanded that my fiancé contact the caller without delay, citing an urgent matter. He promptly responded, but the content of the conversation was unclear. From the limited information that could be discerned, it appeared that there was a crisis involving the mother. We promptly proceeded to the location, where we were greeted by Carrie. She informed us that the mother was experiencing a severe emotional crisis. Upon inquiring about the whereabouts of her father, she stated that they had engaged in a heated argument a few days prior and that he was currently residing at a hotel. She led us to her mother's room, and on the way, I observed that the family photographs that were hung on the hallway wall were either lying on the floor or had been smashed. However, her mother was watching a television program when we entered the room. She looked over and acknowledged our presence. She then addressed me and uttered something to the effect of, "If it isn't my only daughter." Her speech was noticeably slurred, making it challenging to comprehend. Carrie advised me to disregard her statements, as the previous hour had been characterized by her being out of it and uttering incoherent remarks. I contemplated whether my mother might become agitated or engage in a verbal altercation. However, she continued to watch television. I inquired with Carrie if my mother had been consuming alcohol. She replied, she was uncertain about the matter, although she was aware that her mother had consumed some wine earlier. Mom had been uttering incomprehensible statements and then began screaming and shouting about broken families being stuck in a picture frame. This resulted in the chaos in the hallway. As I was questioning Carrie, my fiancé decided to call the emergency line to request an ambulance for Mom. He inquired with Carrie if Mom was taking any medication. It was revealed that my mother was taking medication for anxiety and depression, which I was previously unaware of. I was aware that my mother suffered from anxiety, but I was not aware of the extent of her condition. Once my fiancé had concluded the call with the emergency line, Carrie proceeded to retrieve the bottles of my mother's medications, which she then brought to the doctor's office. My fiancé attempted to contact my stepfather, but was unable to reach him. I inquired with Carrie if she had contacted our other sister, to which she replied that she had not, as she did not wish to cause any additional distress to herself or the unborn child. She then proceeded to concede that she had been correct in my assertion that stress could have an adverse effect on a pregnancy. However, she was reluctant to admit this until I had made my decision, at which point she remained silent. Eventually, the emergency services arrived, and as they did, my mother began to scream hysterically once more. She was yelling incomprehensible phrases, such as, she needed to stay to feed the baby. We all proceeded to the hospital. Eventually, my fiancé was able to contact her father, who arrived much later. The doctor determined that the combination of stress, her and my father's constant conflict, and the interaction of alcohol and medication contributed to her condition. It was determined that she had consumed a considerable amount of alcohol that evening. It appeared that she had become emotionally overwhelmed, resulting in a lack of clarity and disorientation. It was also noted that her mother had not been taking her medication as prescribed. While her physical condition was not affected, she was admitted for observation due to concerns about her mental state. I was unable to visit her or see her until she was released from the hospital, but my father was able to verify her condition. A few details have been revealed, but as far as I am aware, he is not permitted to reside with her either, and was only able to see her that night she was admitted. With regard to the actual wedding arrangements, while Carrie and I were driving back home, she informed me that Laura had texted her a few days before and told her that I was still going to MO. The decision was final, and she would not be answering her or our parents' phone calls, or subsequently, texts were exchanged regarding the matter. This led to further conflict between Carrie, my parents, and Laura. The situation deteriorated further, with neither Carrie nor my parents speaking to Laura for several days. I was particularly taken aback by this turn of events, particularly since Laura never informed me of this herself. I attempted to obtain more information, but Carrie remained silent throughout the journey home. She did, however, have a brief conversation with me. She spoke at length about how she might no longer ever consider me her sister again, expressing her profound betrayal by everything. I simply listened, as I was too tired to engage in further conflict or to offer any meaningful response. She had nothing further to say about the wedding or about her mother's breakdown, and I have not spoken to her since. Currently, I am seeking family therapy in the near future. I am uncertain about the best course of action. Since then, I have been in communication with my mother's physician to inquire about potential recommendations. I have informed Alan of the circumstances and hope that he will be able to relay the information to Laura in a way that does not cause undue distress. I have suggested that he provide a general overview and inform her that her mother is well. The initial catalyst for this situation was the wedding preparations, but it appears that underlying issues may have existed prior to that. The situation has escalated, and it is evident that we have been experiencing difficulties from the outset. Please do not hesitate to contact me with any questions. Please do not hesitate to ask any questions. I will do my utmost to provide an answer. The situation has been somewhat unclear to me, so I may have omitted important details. I apologize for any inconvenience. Finally, I would like to clarify that my sister, who is a bridesmaid, requested to be maid of honor instead of me. Laura had the wedding, which took place before the second lockdown. It was held on our family's farm with approximately 50 attendees. Carrie wore the dress she had chosen because Laura had acquiesced. Subsequently, she donned the tiara she had selected just days prior to the wedding. Carrie proceeded to post on Facebook, directed at me, expressing sentiments such as, "I can't believe my own family would be so toxic and bully me." These posts prompted me to block her. In essence, the wedding itself was uneventful. Carrie consumed alcohol and attempted to engage in dancing and singing, attempting to draw attention to herself. However, these attempts were unsuccessful. She exhibited a markedly unfriendly demeanor, and if I entered the room, she would announce that she could not tolerate negative energy and then leave, accompanied by her boyfriend. Her boyfriend proposed to her and sent me a text message requesting that I attempt to reconcile with her and assist in planning the wedding. I informed him that I was sorry but that I still wanted to be his friend. I explained that I could not accommodate her presence in my life. He informed me that he was sorry and expressed hope for our eventual reconciliation. I have not spoken to Carrie in months, but Laura is doing well and they still keep in touch. My mother and stepfather have been silent, and I have also maintained a distance. I no longer have any contact with them on Facebook, but Laura keeps me informed. There have been no significant developments, and this update is not particularly noteworthy. I am grateful to everyone for their support.